Joe Biden set to end America's longest war, withdrawing all U.S. troops from Afghanistan by September 11th. That deadline in time for the 20th anniversary of the terror attacks planned from there. Reaction from Kabul coming up. France suspends all flights to and from Brazil. The move part of a bid to keep Brazil's new coronavirus variant from spreading through France. And a suburban white police officer who shot and killed black motorist Dante Wright resigns, along with the chief of police. That death prompting new protests in neighboring Minneapolis, a city already on edge over the trial of a former white officer charged with murdering George Floyd. Thanks for joining us on France 24. Good to have you with us. I'm Jeannie Godula. Well, U.S. President Joe Biden today is due to announce the country's full withdrawal from Afghanistan by this September 11th. That, of course, is a highly symbolic date for the U.S., as this year marks the 20th anniversary of the terror attacks that were coordinated from Afghanistan. Last year, the Trump administration made a deal with the Taliban that all U.S. troops would be gone by May in exchange for a promise that the group would not support al-Qaeda or other foreign militants. Well, Biden's Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Brussels today for talks with NATO. He says the alliance would work together with the U.S. to leave Afghanistan together.
After the United States was attacked on 9/11, together we went into Afghanistan to deal with those who attacked us and to make sure that Afghanistan would not again become a haven for terrorists who might attack any of us. And together, we have achieved the goals that we set out to achieve. And now it is time to bring our forces home. We will work very closely together in the weeks and months ahead on a safe, deliberate, and coordinated withdrawal of our forces from Afghanistan. But even as we do that, our commitment to Afghanistan, to its future, will remain.
Nana Moose Stephenson is a journalist based in Kabul. She joins me now from there. Nana, first of all, what kind of reaction has there been to this claim that the U.S. will pull out of Afghanistan by September 11th?
Well, here in Afghanistan, people have indeed been counting down to May 1st, the deadline set in the deal originally made by the U.S. and Taliban. So this announcement does give some kind of clarification that we now know that the U.S. is not going to, in a rush, pull out of Afghanistan by May 1st. But on the other hand, it does raise quite a lot of questions, because obviously it remains to be seen how is the Taliban going to react to this. The Taliban so far has continuously said that if the U.S. is not to pull out by the May 1st deadline, then they would see it as a breach of the deal, which by a lot of people have been seen as a warning that more violence could be coming. So it gives us some answer about what's going to happen around May 1st, but it also raises a lot of concerns here.
So what kind of risks exactly are we talking about? What kind of concerns? Antony Blinken, we heard him a moment ago saying there is a commitment to Afghanistan and its future, but what are the risks for the future?
Well, the Taliban has been negotiating with the Afghan government since September last year. And what we've seen from that is that the Taliban did not at all seem very eager to quickly get a deal with the Afghan government. On the contrary, some would say it seems like the Taliban has been waiting a bit to basically take their time until the U.S. Would potentially leave from here. And of course, this new fact that the U.S. has set an actual date is later, but still there is a date for the withdrawal. It raises the questions as to why would the Taliban now be eager to make a deal, a political deal with the Afghan government. And I think what we hear from the U.S. side now, from Blinken, it does seem like he's reaching out to people here in Afghanistan who are very concerned what a potential further Taliban control and potentially political rule would mean for them. And I'm talking specifically about women and minorities who are very concerned that the price for some kind of peace, some kind of deal in Afghanistan could be paid with their rights.
Nana, thank you for that. That's France 24's Nana Moose Stephenson there reporting for us from Kabul. Next, Iran says it is set to increase its uranium enrichment to 60%, just 30% short of what it needs to build a nuclear weapon. That announcement comes 2 days after an explosion at a nuclear facility in Iran. Iran's blaming Israel for the blast, saying it could hurt renewed negotiations over the broken nuclear deal Donald Trump abandoned 3 years ago. Joe Biden is now asking Vladimir Putin to ease off on tensions between Russia and Ukraine. The two men spoke on the phone Tuesday, with Biden urging the Russian president to pull back the buildup of Russian troops on the border. The U.S. leader also invited Putin to meet in person for a face-to-face summit. Today actually marks 7 years to the day that Ukraine announced what it then called an anti-terrorist operation against Russian-controlled forces that had taken over part of its territory. Valerie DeKimp explains.
As Russia continues to deploy troops to the Ukrainian border, the United States vowed to stand behind Ukraine. The White House says President Joe Biden and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin discussed the growing tensions during a phone conversation on Tuesday. Biden urging Russia to show restraint.
The president voiced our concerns over the sudden Russian military buildup and increasing aggression on the border of Ukraine and called on Russia to de-escalate tensions.
The call came as Secretary of State Anthony Blinken met in Brussels with top officials from Ukraine and NATO in a bid to reassure U.S. allies in the region. In recent weeks, Moscow has moved thousands of combat-ready troops to Ukraine's borders, the largest massing since Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014.
Russia's considerable military buildup is unjustified, unexplained, and deeply concerning.
Ukraine has accused Russia of deploying over 80,000 troops along its border and in Crimea. Meanwhile, Russia insists that the buildup is in response to NATO threats.
Реагируя на угрожающую России военную деятельность Альянса, мы приняли соответствующие меры. Выполнить задачи по обеспечению военной безопасности страны.
In a sign of rising tensions, several Russian warships have been sent to the Black Sea ahead of the planned arrival of 2 American vessels later this week. The Kremlin calling their deployment a provocation.
France has decided to suspend all flights to and from Brazil. That move part of a bid to keep Brazil's new variant from spreading throughout France. Our correspondent Tim Vickery reports.
The last Air France flight, the last ticket to Paris for Romain Legal, a young student who had to cut short her Brazilian adventure after the announcement by the French Prime Minister. She had already undergone a PCR test.
Et donc il y a juste un papier à remplir en plus. C'est pas dans les bars. Au début je l'ai fait, mais au vu de la situation, du nombre de morts qui a augmenté, j'ai vraiment changé mes habitudes. J'ai vraiment fait attention au vu des morts et au vu du nombre en fait de personnes atteintes du Covid et notamment du variant.
Brazil is gradually becoming isolated from the world as the death toll rises. One of the hardest hit cities is Rio, also one of the places where vaccination is happening most slowly. In this Olympic park, which 5 years ago welcomed the world, they're going as fast as they can.
AstraZeneca, a dose é 0,5.
It's the turn of Marta, this 63-year-old woman.
Muito lento, muito. Principalmente aqui no Rio de Janeiro, está muito, muito lento. E ainda tem muita gente que não está tomando a vacina, infelizmente.
There's relief in the air and some anger too.
Sei lá, negligente. Por aí.
What more could
Poderia
he
ser
have
feito
done?
demais. Eu acho que lá atrás já poderia ter começado e acho que já teria muito mais gente vacinada, menos mortos, entendeu? Muito.
Tenha tomado a vacina, a gente também pode pegar. E agora tem P1, variante, ele está ficando resistente.
According to a recent study, the Coronavac vaccine, the main one used in Brazil, is very effective against a new variant. The problem is that only 11% of the population have been vaccinated to date, a rate far too low when Fiocruz, the Brazilian equivalent of the Pasteur Institute, has detected more than 90 new worrying strains in the country, including the infamous P1 variant, which has been studied by this specialist.
A vacinação em grande escala se acompanhe do isolamento social. Vacinar apenas não contém a transmissão. E, além disso, o Brasil, de certa maneira, propiciou a propagação dessa variante na medida em que não tomou medidas de contenção social, de fechamento. Se hoje há um fechamento de fronteira, ele foi um fechamento tardio.
The fear of the health specialists is this. Underground parties are taking place everywhere, like this one in Rio just a few days ago, encouraged by a president who still argues against lockdown and social restrictions. In the streets of Rio, bars and restaurants have just reopened, against the backdrop of a variant that increasingly infects young people. In intensive care units, half of the patients are under the age of 40.
The shooting death of another black man in the Minneapolis area has pushed a suburban police officer and the head of a local police department to resign. 20-year-old Daunte Wright was killed Sunday during a traffic stop. His death inflamed a protest surrounding the trial of Derek Chauvin, the former white police officer accused of killing George Floyd. Yuka Royer explains.
Called and said he just got pulled over by the police.
The mother of Daunte Wright recounts her final phone conversation with her son moments before he was killed by a police officer.
And then when I called back, the girl that he had in the car answered the phone, and it was on a FaceTime. And she said, she was crying and screaming, and she said that they shot him. And then she pointed the phone towards the driver's seat, and my son was laying there, unresponsive.
My Lord.
That was the last time that I seen my son.
Joining her and Wright's girlfriend, another bereaved family, that of George Floyd. They'd come out of the courthouse where Derek Chauvin's trial was taking place.
Minneapolis, you all can't sweep this under the rug anymore. We're here, and we will fight for justice for this family, just like we're fighting for our brother.
A so-called mistake, a handgun for a taser, it's unacceptable. You know, when is enough enough?
The Brooklyn Center police have said that the officer who fatally shot Wright during a routine traffic stop on Sunday had fired her gun by error, thinking it was a taser. That officer, Kim Potter, as well as the police chief Tim Gannon, who came under fire for calling the event an accident, both resigned on Tuesday. The city's mayor said he hoped the move would help heal the community, but riot police and protesters faced off again for a third straight night as calls for justice and accountability continue.
Meanwhile, inside the Minneapolis courthouse, the defense has begun its case in the murder trial of former police officer Derek Chauvin. On Tuesday, an expert witness testified that Chauvin was justified in his use of force during his arrest of George Floyd.
I felt that Derek Chauvin was justified and was acting with objective reasonableness, following Minneapolis Police Department policy and current standards of law enforcement in his interactions with Mr. Floyd.
A lighter note for you now, and the Tokyo Olympics are just 100 days away. There still, though, is a lot of uncertainty as to just how those games in the midst of a pandemic will actually take place. Olympic organizers are struggling to deal with a surge in coronavirus cases in Tokyo, where just 1% of the population currently has the vaccine.
Buddhist monks blow shell horns to pray for successful games, as a new Olympic rings monument was installed on top of Mount Takao. With 100 days to go before the start of the sporting festival, delayed for a year because of the coronavirus pandemic, the governor of Tokyo hopes the host city can turn the misfortune into a blessing.
心に残るそのコロナとの戦いを超えてですね、開催できる大会にしていく。
Reflecting the harsh reality, however, the game's official mascot, which Koike unveiled at the City Hall, will not be displayed to the public for now to avoid drawing crowds. Japan is seeing a fresh spike in infections. The country's second city, Osaka, this week was hit with a record number of daily new cases, topping 1,000 for the first time. Runners for the Olympic torch relay had to run through empty parks. Cases have also surged in the capital, Tokyo, and elsewhere. As the pandemic continues to rage across the world, organisers made the unprecedented decision to bar foreign spectators from coming into the country. Yet the International Olympic Committee remains confident.
So the next 100 days will be about refining all the details and testing, training the teams. This is what we're going to do.
This is a crucial time for the organisers to drum up public support. But with less than 1% of the population vaccinated so far, a majority of the Japanese public is still against holding the Games altogether.
Thank you for watching France 24. Don't go away. There is a lot more to come.